I think that doctors and nurses have to start to be trained to think for themselves, to not allow themselves to be so indoctrinated and told what to do. They honestly don't think for themselves. It's like you can tell it's a canned response. You have arthritis, you get a replacement, or you go on NSAIDs, or you get steroid shots. Well, there's many other things we can do for arthritis. And then it's driven by the insurance companies too, who are practicing medicine without a license, in that a Medicare can tell a doctor, you have to try these two drugs before you go to this drug. When the doctor, it's your doctor, it's a patient-doctor relationship. That doctor knows, hopefully, what you should be getting. And if they know drug C is what you should be getting, but they have to try A and B because Medicare dictates it, that's insane. That is just insane that they can't let doctors practice medicine.
Welcome to Harmonic Alignment,
a podcast that explores the new frontier of energy medicine,
bridging the gap between Western medicine and quantum physics,
giving you easy and practical solutions.
Guided by
me, Dr. Larissa Sharipova,
and me, Priscilla Koblenz. Join us on a journey discovering your harmonic alignment. On today's episode of Harmonic Alignment, Dr. Larissa Sharipova connects with Dr. Joanna Carmichael, a registered nurse and doctor of metaphysics. She shares her incredible journey from Pharma to Dharma. Joanna spent over 20 years administering and overseeing drug trials for pharmaceutical companies, and along the way, she found her soul's healing path through metaphysics and Ayurvedic medicine. And she's now helping others transition from Western medicine to a more holistic approach. This is a conversation you don't want to miss.
I'm so very excited today to interview my friend and colleague, Joanna Carmichael, and I would like to hear your story. I know you were trained as a registered nurse, and now you do a lot of different things, and even writing a book from Pharma to Dharma. And you working for a while in a pharmaceuticals industry. So how that happened, that you changed your life purpose?
First of all, thank you for having me. I love being with you, Larissa, and love that we're friends and colleagues. So thank you for having me on. I was traditionally trained as a registered nurse, went to Villanova, and in my fourth year, I kind of knew I was going to do something else with the degree. I did psychiatric nursing for a couple of years, and then somehow I got derailed into the pharmaceutical research arena, seemingly by accident. It was a very fulfilling career for me for quite a while, for over 20 years. I did clinical trials. I have nothing to do with the ads on TV or sales and marketing, but I worked in every therapeutic area, phases 1 through 4 in clinical research. So right after the animal testing to the testing in normal, healthy male volunteers, and then in patients, and then post-marketing. It was a very rewarding career, and I worked for 2 pharmaceutical companies. And then when I was 26, I started my own company where I could provide clinical coordination services to doctors doing research on a contract basis. So ultimately, I ended up working for all of them, all of the drug companies in multiple therapeutic areas. So cardiovascular, endocrine, GI, GU, we did it all. Simultaneously with starting that company, I started studying metaphysics. Because something happened in my life. I didn't really have, a spiritual practice or anything like that, but I was searching for reasons as to why something I didn't plan happened to me. It was quite a paradox because people would say, well, how can you be a metaphysician and do drug research for a living? And I would say, I don't know, but I was passionate about both because metaphysics it's a natural marriage with natural medicine. I started learning about homeopathy and Chinese medicine and Ayurveda. So the answer to how could I be a metaphysician and do drug research was that there are many, many choices on the spectrum of healing, not just drugs, surgery, and radiation. In that there are these other modalities, Eastern modalities, and then I started to really resonate with Eastern philosophy and tradition. I ended up falling in love with Ayurveda. And so while I was doing drug research, I was also simultaneously studying deep metaphysics and alternative therapies. So now I still do RN care management and act as a patient advocate for patients who need help discerning the maze that medicine has become these days. So I am there to advocate, to help them with appointments, to check that all the right things are being done, to help communicate with other doctors and health professionals. I'm slowly weaning myself off of that to do Ayurveda, meditation, yoga, metaphysics full time.
It sounds like it started with your own health journey, that you started searching for something for yourself, correct?
I wasn't having any physical problems, but it was more mental, emotional, spiritual. Where I was raised Catholic, it never really resonated with me. If I didn't understand or even know the difference between spirituality and religion, I just knew Catholicism didn't resonate with me. But when I started searching for answers as to why do bad things happen to good people, well, I was taught you plan everything, and then life turns out, the way you plan. And in my case, that just wasn't the case, as it is, I think, for most people, because unexpected things happen. And I was searching for answers. I think I read more books in the next 5 years than I read even in nursing school in that search, which led me to explore Eastern philosophy and traditions and religions. And I resonated and gravitated towards that rather than Christianity. So it was really more mental, emotional, spiritual for me, and trying to find peace of mind within my life and with what I was doing. And really towards the end of that pharmaceutical career, I got PhDs in metaphysics and divinity, and then Ayurvedic certifications and all these other certifications. I started to see the truth about what the pharmaceutical industry is about. And I started to see corruption even in research. And I started to see the way research was starting to change, and not for the better, as technology also kind of took over, where things became much more mechanized and less heart, for sure. But I did experience corruption firsthand. So I knew I was on my way out, because I didn't want to be part of an industry that was more about profit than people. So then I left the industry in 2009 permanently.
So what is the difference between religion and spirituality from your perspective?
From my perspective, religion is about man-made laws and spirituality is about God's law. And so what I found studying the different traditions is that the common threads of love and compassion run through all of them, no matter where they're from. Where they get bogged down is in the man-made laws and rules and regulations that are just indoctrinations of control, because I think a lot of the control that we're experiencing now on the planet has a lot to do with religion. It has to do with medicine and education and things like that, but religion has done a lot to indoctrinate people. I think it's kind of like the difference between prayer and meditation. It's like prayer is talking to God, meditation's listening for God. So I started to really feel like this part of me begin to wake up to God and to these concepts. And so the deeper I delved into it, the more passionate I became about it, and it started to bring more meaning to my life. I went on to deepen my metaphysics and became an interfaith minister, because I truly believed that those common threads of love and compassion, how one expresses it is a very personal thing, but the metaphysical aspects are impersonal. It's like electricity or gravity. It doesn't care if you cook the dinner or burn the house down. Metaphysical laws are like that too. There's karma, there's love, there's reciprocity, attraction, many metaphysical laws. So it doesn't matter what religion you are. Karma works in all of them.
So when you become more spiritual or start on your spiritual journey, now you could see that all the dogma that they teach you in nursing school and in medicine, when you open your mind and spirit, you become more aware. Is that what happened, you think?
Well, it was part of the journey. Those things are stepping stones. I've gone through the beating myself up about it. How could I have been in an industry that does this? How could I not have known? But the fact is, I was part of the indoctrination in medical school and nursing school and, any healthcare, you're indoctrinated. This is the way it is. It's black and white. You do this for that. You do this for that, no matter who the patient is, no matter what else is going on. And my feeling about it now is that it's so highly specialized that doctors now more than ever are treating body parts and systems rather than the whole person. It's going in the wrong direction. And because I do RN care management, I can tell you how frustrating it is for me as a medical professional, but for patients and the elderly who, can't navigate all these systems, and everything's going online, and it's AI and auto attendants, and appointments are getting harder and harder to get, even when you have an emergency. It truly is going in the wrong direction, I feel. And that's why I think what we do is more important now than ever, to treat people holistically as whole people, not as a symptom list or a list of body parts that has something wrong and we have to fix it. Metaphysically, sometimes things are very, very literal. It's like, is the problem with your shoulder? Are you shouldering a burden? You have heart disease. Is your heart not open? Are you not forgiving? Are you not compassionate? Or is someone not compassionate to you? Is there love there? Metaphysics is very literal. And when patients delve into those aspects, then true healing can occur.
So all these principles you use with your patients and clients that you work now?
Yeah, when they let me. When they let me, and if they're open-minded enough. The holistic approach to me is not only filling their med boxes, and the elderly is like 5 to 20 drugs sometimes, but also making dietary recommendations and trying to understand their unique nature and constitution, and suggesting exercise and meditation. And I've even done hypnosis on a few who wanted to go deeper and really delve into, why did this happen to me? Why am I sick? Or have a conversation with that body part to find out, well, what's the message? What is my body trying to tell me? You wrote the book, Listen to Your Body, right? So, to try to teach them that these things aren't random. You don't get sick for no reason. And the ones that are willing, I have great results. I put them on supplements or activators. I'm able to reduce their medication. Now, I'm not a doctor or a nurse practitioner, but in concert with their doctor and the patient's consent. I have patients that are on so much medication, it's insane. And so if they're open to it, I've had great success doing that. So, that to me is pharma to dharma. It's like you're going from pharmaceutical management to more about life purpose, and what are you here to do, and what prompts you to go do something. Many times it's your own spiritual journey, right? You went through that. I went through that with, mental, emotional, spiritual. I think we all confront that at some point. That's the Dharma piece, your true purpose.
And you found your Dharma, for sure.
I have now. Pharmaceutical research was very rewarding for me when I first started. It was a very rewarding career. It totally renewed nursing for me. When I started my company, I was a study coordinator, and I put patients in drug trials. So I know both sides of the coin intimately. And then I went on to do other consulting, project management and monitoring, being a medical monitor overseas. That was actually where I got to see the mind-body connection up close. Because you have to have 2 placebo-controlled trials to get an NDA, a new drug application. But there's always like a placebo run-in to make sure the patient has the disease state that they have for the trial. So you wouldn't want to put a hypertension patient in a drug trial for hypertension unless they actually had it. Many times they didn't actually have hypertension. They had white coat syndrome, but yet they were put on a pharmaceutical. So that's the reason for the placebo run-in, where the patient doesn't know what they're getting, but the doctor and the nurse do. And you're waiting for that blood pressure to go up to make sure that they have the disease that you're trying to treat. But what was really fascinating is seeing more severe patients, like with heart disease, where there was objective evidence on an EKG when they're on a treadmill. And here they're on placebo and they're doing fine, or they're in the double-blind phase and they're doing great, but then it ends up that they were on placebo. And the objective evidence would even show that, the ST segment depression improved, or their fatigue or their shortness of breath or whatever improved, sometimes mind over matter. The placebo effect's about 40%. So that's why they do placebo-controlled trials. Patients get a lot of attention in a drug study because you don't want anything to happen to them. There's informed consent, not that we'd know anything about that in the last 4 years, but there is informed consent where they are given this extensive list of criteria that they need to do and need to fulfill to be in the trial. And so they know what they're getting into, as well as what the alternatives to the trial are. And so at the time, it totally renewed nursing for me. I loved that, spending that kind of time with patients, because I got to talk to them. I knew their families. I knew their issues. I think that extra attention is also why they got better. I'd have some patients wait 30 days and want to be in the next study, which is how you do it if they want to be, serial patients. So at that time, yes, that was my Dharma. I was very relieved to not work for anybody anymore. I was loving everything I was doing, and it was fine then until it wasn't.
So what wasn't fine, and why did you leave the industry?
Like I said, you're indoctrinated to think one way. And so when I say I've seen the corruption, I've heard the corruption, it was very easy to manipulate data. It was relatively easy to change a protocol. Now, sometimes you do have to change a protocol after it starts in the clinic because you didn't realize some things. Like you make every effort to make it perfect, and of course it's not until it gets in the clinic. So there are very legitimate reasons for changing a protocol, but I got to see that some of the reasons were not legitimate, and that they would hurry things along, or if something wasn't going in the right direction, there would be meetings about statistics and how could we maneuver this, to look a different way or frame it a different way. And I didn't like that. And then when I dove deeper into it and talked to other people, some whistleblowers, when they say they don't know or they didn't know, they always know. They always know. Somebody knows. And so it was more about, let's get this drug to market. The pressure was tremendous. I mean, the deadlines and timelines, I got sick doing it. I was on like 4 airplanes a week and traveling all the time for about 15 years. It was insane. I totally beat up my body doing that. And the pressure was tremendous because it's like, quick, get the data so that they could maximize time on the patent. It just got to be quality versus lousy research, frankly, and investigators that wouldn't even follow their own protocol, or investigators that were being paid to give talks or to be the keynote speaker at a sales meeting. And it's like, well, we'll get this drug to market. Yeah, it causes liver disease. But by the time they realize it causes liver disease, we will have made billions. These CEOs get millions of dollars in bonuses. And I made great money. I will freely admit that. And that's what kept me in it as long as I did. I kept talking myself back in because of the money, the 401k, the bonuses, this, that, and the other thing. And then it gets to a point where like your soul starts to die because you know a higher truth. That's kind of what happened to me. I got very, very sick when I was in Europe on a ski trip. It's very unlike me to not get better fast, and I wasn't getting better fast. And I knew that if I didn't leave the industry, that I was going to continue to be sick. That's how I made the decision to leave.
Well, it probably was a hard decision, but you're probably much better now for what you're doing now, correct?
Absolutely. I wish I had actually left sooner, but we do things when we're ready. And it took me getting sick to realize that if I continued knowing what I knew, because then it feels fraudulent, then it's like I'm working in a system that's not truthful. Interestingly enough, the last company I worked with for another company, they were using thalidomide. The managers were telling my people who were monitoring the trials, which is for the safety and efficacy to ensure the integrity of research data. And managers were telling my people, back off, have them back off, have them back off. And it's like, we weren't there to slap their hand. We were there to make sure they were doing everything right and on the up and above board so that you could send good data to the FDA. It got to be sickening and very hard to support my people who were just trying to do their jobs. That was almost like the clincher, I would say, where it's like, I cannot do this anymore. I'm not saying that all drug trials are bad or all drug companies are bad. I'm not saying that either. We do need clinical research. We need pharmaceuticals in their place, though.
I see that it's happening more and more, those published articles or statistics change or something manipulated in the trial. So I think it's getting worse because of the technology. Everything is corrupted now. So our medical system is broken and pharmaceuticals getting more and more access to everything. So where do you see our medical system is broken and can we fix it?
Well, that's a great question, Larissa. Sadly, I think it's crashing. I say sadly, it's crashing. I'm sad for the people who have to withstand the crash, but it needs to crash. It really needs to crash. And I think that's what I'm seeing. And because I'm still very much in it, I'm still in hospitals and doctors' offices and dealing with the allopathic medicine. I think it needs to crash so that we can do something else. And while that's happening, patients need to take responsibility and be much more involved and put the power of their health back in their hands. If the last 4 years haven't taught us anything, hopefully it's taught us that we have to get our sovereignty back and our freedoms back, and that we can't be forced to have any treatment, especially without informed consent. Because in my opinion, people were vaccinated and basically put in a drug study without their informed consent. I don't know anybody that actually got a consent form or a package insert when they got the vax. So I think it's crashing, but I think like everything else, like our politics, like our commerce, like our banking, like religions, it's all interconnected and it's all coming down because we have to be done putting Band-Aids on hemorrhages, and we have to do something new and different. And I think that's where holistic medicine comes in. You know, as Western medicine continues to fail at certain things, which it does in chronic disease, it's great in trauma and it's great in infection, but in chronic disease, it's really lacking. And all they do is put you on a drug, and then you have a side effect, and they put you on another drug for that side effect, and then that one causes a side effect. And that's how it happens, especially to our elderly, which is heartbreaking, because the more drugs they're on, the unsafer they get.
So where do you see medicine going, or new medicine? How do you envision new medicine if the old one will crash?
Well, I think that doctors and nurses have to start to be trained to think for themselves, to not allow themselves to be so indoctrinated and told what to do. They honestly don't think for themselves. It's like you can tell it's a canned response. You know, you have arthritis, you get a replacement, or you go on NSAIDs, or you get steroid shots. Well, there's many other things we can do for arthritis. And then it's driven by the insurance companies too, who are practicing medicine without a license, in that a Medicare can tell a doctor, you have to try these 2 drugs before you go to this drug. When the doctor, it's your doctor, it's a patient-doctor relationship. That doctor knows, hopefully, what you should be getting. And if they know drug C is what you should be getting, but they have to try A and B because Medicare dictates it, that's insane. That is just insane that they can't let doctors practice medicine and treat their patients the way they want and need to treat their patients. So I think it has to start with education and getting doctors and nurses to learn how to think for themselves, and also that it includes holistic medicine, that includes much more about diet, much more about sleep and exercise and spirituality and emotional well-being. I'm big into emotional, spiritual is my wheelhouse, and that you treat a whole person, not the disease or the body part. I think it's going to take a while, but I am finding that people are waking up. You know, even with choosing a health sharing program versus insurance companies to try to put them out of business, because there's corrupt as the drug companies are. And it's sad to watch people have to withstand this, but I also think it's necessary. And metaphysically, their soul chose to be a part of it in that way. Just like the souls who chose to take the shot and get sick and maybe leave. That was their part of the mission, because I think without seeing what's happening as a result, we wouldn't know. So we have to feel grateful for those people who did what they did and withstood what they're withstanding, whether it's illness or job loss and even death. We have to be grateful to them, because that's what's helping reveal the truth about what's going on.
Tell me more about your program, Pharma to Dharma. What's the purpose of your program or your book?
To educate people on exactly what we're talking about. In other words, that there are more choices than just drug, surgery, and radiation, that they can take control of their health and well-being and not relinquish it to a physician who's sometimes been put on a pedestal. I mean, I'm with elderly people all the time, and it's like, my doctor said, they're not thinking for themselves. They're not like taking in the information and saying, let me sit with this and see what feels right. So my program and my book are about educating about what's possible, and then also encouraging people to look at diet, look at rest, exercise, meditation, stress management, and herbs and other modalities, energy work, bioenergetic work, the things that you do as well. as their choices, because on the metaphysical spectrum and on the healing spectrum, there are hundreds of choices. We have a saying in Ayurveda, one person's poison is another person's nectar, and vice versa, depending on their constitution. So you could be causing harm, giving one patient an herb and totally cure another one with the same thing. It should be much more individualized. And that's really my message. Medicine needs to be individualized and personal.
Wow.
And that the doctor-patient relationship is sacred. And nobody gets to intervene like an insurance company. What is said in an exam room is sacred. And your doctor should know how to treat you without having to answer to an insurance company.
So how can people find you if they would like to work with you?
I actually have a 90-day Pharma to Dharma program where people can work with me for 90 days or 120 days, whatever works for them. And I have longer term programs too, if people are interested in working together for like a year. But the basis of that program is to learn stress management techniques. The first thing is meditation and learning to go within and trust your own inner wisdom and guidance. I don't think we're taught how to do that. I think it's something we've cultivated later, but I think little kids should be taught to meditate. And we can teach them like as young as 3 and 4 to just sit quietly and listen to themselves, listen to their bodies. And then it's based in Ayurveda, which is a nature-based philosophy from India. Ayurveda means the wisdom of life, literally, or the wisdom of life and longevity. And so it's about understanding your individual constitutional type and how to make lifestyle choices in harmony with that type. So it involves diet, practices, yoga, breathing, and cultivating balance really in all areas of your life, mental, emotional, spiritual, your relationships, what you do for a living, your dharma, your life purpose. Because I think life purpose is something that's extremely important and people are not tapped into. Because when you're doing a job, as I was, that you have grown to hate, that works on your physiology, that works on your mental, emotional, and spiritual health. And just because it was making me money, it wasn't healthy. And I think a lot of people are in that position where they're just doing a job just for money and just to pay the bills. And that's sad to me. And from what I've seen, it really wears on people's hearts and souls if they're not in their dharma, in their purpose, and waking up in the morning and just looking forward to doing what they do.
How people can find you?
They can find me on pharmatodharma.com, which actually will take them to Vedic alchemy, because I do multiple things in the Vedic wisdom, which is Ayurveda, yoga, meditation, metaphysics, that type of thing. So either way, pharmatodharma.com or vedicalchemy.org. My email is my name, Joanna Carmichael at me.com. You can reach out to me directly, or go on the website. You can get in touch with me that way. And I'm on social media.
Last question. So our podcast called Harmonic Alignment. So what one recommendation would you give people to be in harmony or to be in alignment with their life purpose or for health, for happiness?
Harmonic alignment to me means that, all the parts are working for the good of the whole. If I'm waking up in the morning and I feel I'm manifesting my desires, I feel great about going to work. I have a spiritual practice where I can connect to God or the universe or whatever that means to you. And I'm going to eat a breakfast that is nourishing and in harmony with my constitution, and take supplements and herbs and, whatever is going to help support me in my journey, and to have healthy relationships. And when we detoxify our bodies, and then subsequently our minds and hearts get detoxified too. And one of the toxicities is relationships, the wrong job or the wrong marriage or the wrong partnership. And sometimes even the wrong friends, friends that no longer provide you nourishment and nurturing. When you make change in just one area, when people just start to meditate in the morning, things start to change, and then other changes follow from that. So I would say that's the most important. Get to know yourself and start a spiritual practice first. And then the pieces come together more easily. You can start anywhere though.
Thank you for all your wisdom. And I'm so happy to chat with you today, and we'll see you again and talk about Ayurveda.
I can't wait. Thanks, Larissa. It's always great being with you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Harmonic Alignment. If something resonated with you, we would love to hear about it. Please consider leaving us a 5-star review and subscribing so you don't miss an upcoming episode. Thank you. The information contained in this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and not intended for the purpose of diagnosing, treating, curing, or preventing any disease. Before using any products referenced on the podcast, consult with your healthcare provider. Carefully read all labels and directions. The products and information received through the podcast should not be used to replace a consultation or advice from your healthcare provider. If you suspect you have a medical problem or have any healthcare questions, please promptly call your healthcare provider. This podcast, including Dr. Larissa Sharapova and Priscilla Koblenz, and the producers are not responsible for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained in this podcast. This podcast may contain endorsements and advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct financial benefit to the product or services referenced.